it is time to officially start. So Mike Henkel, one of our co-chairs, if you would please, could you please read the land acknowledgement and the community conversation
I
rules?
sure will, and I've also put them in the chat. And then when I'm done, if you don't mind, I just have one tiny announcement. And because I will probably have to drop off later, rather just get it over with. But all righty, so blessings. I'm so grateful to see you all tonight. So our climate reality DFW chapter community ground rules. We make space or take space. Try to keep it to 2 minutes each for each attendant to speak, and then pass it to the next person. Speak from the I perspective instead of generalizing. Practice active listening and seek to understand. Assume good intentions. Respect one another's space and time and interest. Be willing to be uncomfortable. Be open to productive discomfort. Intent does not negate impact. Disagree without discord. No room for personal attacks or labeling here, except that there is no quick fix. And I don't want to punt it necessarily, pass it, but if anybody would like to do the indigenous land acknowledgement that has not done that before, would anybody care to? Otherwise, I will move on. Raise your hand and go.
Go for it, Mike.
Okay, indigenous land acknowledgement. We basically like to start this way as well. Also, um, all righty. So specifically in the DFW areas, we are standing and living on land stolen from the Kickapoo, Wichita, Tawakoni, Humanos, and Comanche people who have been harmed yet continue to thrive in the process of colonization and white supremacy. I encourage all of us to go to nativeland.ca and educate ourselves on these native communities. I feel like did I copy the whole thing? I feel like I'm missing a sentence or two, but that is the gist of it. We are living on stolen lands.
Thank you, Mike.
Immigrants.
Thank you. I appreciate
I
it.
put my email there because my announcement has to do with something I'm going to try to get to tomorrow night. It is the Chicago chapter, Climate Reality chapter, is doing a reducing building emissions in Chicago. So the greenhouse gas emissions, they estimate in the city of Chicago, which is big, 70% of greenhouse gas emissions come from buildings. So I will be happy to forward that sign up and link to anybody who feels like they might be able to. So just shoot me an email and let me know, and I'll forward you that link. And that is my announcement. I feel like it does have, in the terms of a big city, we have similar stuff going on for Dallas and Fort Worth, and maybe there's stuff we can learn and apply here. So that is all I have. Thank you, Beth.
Awesome, Mike. Thank you very much. November, as we all know, is a month for giving gratitude. It is also Native American Appreciation Month. After our presentation, we will be doing a gratitude ceremony for the earth. We have been encouraged and given permission by various teachers and elders from North and South America to participate in ceremonies giving gratitude to the earth. In this way, we're bringing in an eco-spiritual element into our earth and environmental activism. For our opening, I'd like to tell you a little story between me and my teacher, grandmother Twyla Nitch, Seneca elder. I lived and studied with her on the Cattaraugus Reservation in the early 90s. And I was living with her, but getting ready to go spend Thanksgiving with some friends. And I asked her, Gran, what's the difference between this contemporary American culture and our understanding of Thanksgiving? And what's the difference between that and Native folks' perspective? And she said, oh, that's easy. And yes, she did sound exactly like that. She said, for Native folks, Thanksgiving is every day. And with that, I would like to introduce our speakers. The topic is extreme heat plus workplace safety plus climate equity, a call to action for Texans. The presentation will be done by Rose Jones and Alex Holland, powerhouse activists out there in the world. Uh, uh, and they will conclude with giving us a call to action for Texans. Rose is her research interests include health, extreme heat policy, climate epidemiology, and qualitative methods. She has launched the Rapid Anthology Consulting to build awareness for policy change at the intersection of heat and health and human rights. And I'll have her put her website address in the chat before she leaves. And Alex Holland, our former co-chair, is a second-year PhD student in the School of Public and Population Health at the University of Texas Medical Branch, where she is studying the effects of climate change and environmental injustice on the health of older adults. So, I see, Rose, you've already got your screen up, so take it away.
Okay. Thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to cast the spotlight on this incredibly important issue. And I specifically am grateful that you were able to work with me to get this in before the end of the year, because the call of action will, one part of it will conclude at the end of December. And an extra bonus is the opportunity to be able to work with Alex again. So what we've put together is, and we're going to be really respectful of your time, we've got a 20-minute, we should be able to do that very easily and have time for Q&A. These are the 4 topics that we're going to go through. Heat and human health. Alex is going to cover that. I'll then jump into policy, looking specifically at OSHA and what the proposed ruling is. We'll then do a deeper dive into what the implications for policy are in Texas, and then we'll wrap it up with a call to action. So Alex will start with looking at the implications of extreme heat and human health.
Yeah, thanks, Rose. So hi, everybody. Glad to be back. Just going to give a kind of a brief overview of why heat is bad for health. We know, generally speaking, that when it's hot, it's bad for people's health, but we don't necessarily know maybe the biology behind it. So this is just a really quick overview, especially as it relates to people who work outdoors. I primarily work with older adults, so a lot of my study population isn't necessarily outdoor working, but quite a few people are above the age of 65, which is kind of where I'm studying. But all of that to say, kind of the 3 main issues when it comes to heat are the issues with your cardiovascular system, your sweat response and organs, and then also just like dehydration. And so all of these are affected primarily or affected when people are working outdoors. So starting with like dehydration, we know that if you don't drink enough water, that leads to what you can see here with renal strain, decreased sweating, and then fluid loss, which can also then be linked to issues with organs. Your cells will start dying, and then you start entering organ failure, which is when you start going into heat stroke. But in general, for everybody, a lot of it has to do, and a lot of problems we see come from the cardiovascular strain that people have. So like it puts a lot of pressure on your heart to be able to try and keep your temperature down and regulating that temperature. And so actually what we see, especially during the summer months among both older adults, my study population, but then in the broader population as well, is not necessarily heat related diagnoses and presentations when it comes to like going to the ER and stuff. A lot of times it's heart attacks or other cardiovascular events or respiratory events. And so all of that to say, it's really hard, I think, for us as researchers to be able to quantify just how much people are being affected by heat, because we don't have good ways of measuring it yet. Like on autopsies, it won't say necessarily heat. It'll be labeled as a cardiovascular event. Or when people are presenting to the ER, it's not necessarily for a heat related, even though heat is exacerbating whatever condition they might be presenting with. But in general, we know that heat is associated with heat exhaustion, cardiorespiratory events, heat stroke, and potentially death. And I think Rose is going to talk more specifically about how that was seen, at least this past summer, especially in workers, and how that relates to the OSHA standards that we'll be talking about. So feel free, Rose.
Thanks. And just as and I would add, just to emphasize what Alex said, what we know about the impact of heat on the human body, mortality and morbidity, is very much a dynamic field. We're learning as we go. One of the things, however, that experts agree on is that we are vastly undercounting both mortality and morbidity. So with that in mind, here's just a couple of factors to keep in mind. We know that heat is the #1 cause of heat and death threat from climate change. More Americans die in heat waves than in hurricanes, floods, tornadoes combined. And we've seen data that indicates 117% rise in heat-related deaths in the US. Another critical point, and by the way, again, emphasizing that we're still underestimating those counts. Heat affects everyone, but it doesn't do so equally. We know that Black, brown, poor communities, outdoor workers, and pregnant women, the elderly, children are particularly at risk. But it does affect every organ in your body. And I guess one other thing to throw out, and this will be relevant for workers, is that the other way that heat impacts the human body is through the medications that we take. If you have underlying causes, there's a whole genre, classes of drugs, psychotropic drugs, blood pressure drugs, all will be impacted by heat. And if you're working outside, that's particularly true. Let's look at policy. We currently have no federal standards for workers to protect them for safety against heat. Only 6 states in the United States currently have some type of regulation. Most of it's partial. A few cities, including Phoenix, do have some protection for workers, and 2 states have gone the opposite direction, notably Texas and Florida. Both states have adopted legislation, and I'll talk a little bit about this in more detail with Texas, adopted legislation that literally has eliminated basic heat standards and protection for workers, including access to water and access to shade. So OSHA finally, after many years of trying to put together standards that can be proposed to Congress, they finally were able to do it in July of this year. Prior to that, most efforts to get a federal mandate in place were met with great resistance from lobbyists. And that continues to be the case, especially in states like Texas. And of course, with Trump's administration coming on board, this is going to continue to manifest. The proposal that OSHA has put in place would cover approximately 36 million workers, indoor and outdoor workers. And this was one of the points of contention between labor and policymakers and workers, was indoor versus outdoor workers. What we know is that indoor workers can be and are affected by heat in very radical ways, just like outdoor workers. We've got factory workers, we've got restaurant workers, we've got lots of workers, gardeners, et cetera. So it's not just outdoor workers. OSHA proposes that if we put basic standards in place, it will save almost $9.2 billion from illnesses and death related to heat. And again, as I mentioned, we expect this to be extremely problematic when Trump comes on board, because he's on record for saying that one of the first things he's going to do is dismantle OSHA, and including this this proposal, which I'll talk about in our call to action. So what are the requirements? What OSHA has put together, it would require employees to do the following. They would have to work with their workers to create a written health and safety plan specific to heat. So that's a really important point, because this is not a one-size-fits-all. The idea would be to have the workers and the employers collaborate in their unique situation. The second aspect of the proposal is that clean water would be provided to employees at no cost. And I'm going to share with you some case studies from Texas where you can see how particularly relevant that will be. The proposal also calls for paid rest breaks in shaded areas. Fourthly, for new employees, when they arrive into a scenario that is hot, that they would have a period of transition. We know that if you ease a worker into the workplace over the course of weeks, depending on what the temperature is, and even in some cases months, that will reduce mortality and morbidity associated with heat. And finally, the proposal calls for rather the training for workers, supervisors, and managers on heat, because what we see is that oftentimes without understanding how heat affects the body and how it affects the workers, we literally have cases of workers who pass out at work. No one recognizes that it's heat related, and so delay in getting medical attention. If this proposal goes through, these would be the workers that would be covered. Most in the federal government, including the U.S. Postal Service, private sector, self-employed, farm workers and immediate families of farm workers, workers exposed to hazard agencies, and then most state and local governments, which is important because of what's happening in Texas and places like Florida. Who would be exempt? It would be sedentary indoor workers. And this was extremely controversial. Some workers felt like they had been sold out, but this was the only way OSHA felt like they could even have a chance of getting this into Congress. Because as I mentioned, you have indoor workers who are exposed to extreme temperatures, like in kitchens or factories. But again, this was part of the negotiation. Firefighters would be exempt, as would be EMS. So let's look at what's happening in Texas. In September of last year, 2023, House Bill 2127 went into effect. And locally, many workers, particularly within the Latino community, refer to House Bill 2127 as the Death Star Law. And the reason for that are based on some of these statistics that I'm going to share with you. Every year from 2009 through 2021, worker deaths have increased in Texas. Texas recorded 42 heat-related deaths on the jobs, more than any other state. And today I just added this statistic because it literally just came in. OSHA just finally released the 2023 heat-related mortality for workers. And Texas saw among construction workers 88 deaths. Now remember, bear in mind, we know that this is an underestimate. Another interesting fact is the notion that of 12 companies across the country that lost multiple workers, 5 of these were located in Texas. Less than 5% of Texas workforce is unionized, so we can't rely on unions who typically provide their workers with basic safety and standards. So 95% of workers in our state are not covered. It's all on a voluntary basis. And the other significant, I think, statistical or data point to point out is the notion that we know if we look at where we're going, heat is going to continue to increase, and it's estimated that it's going to go up by 3 to 7 degrees Fahrenheit in Texas within the next 20 years. That is significant. I'm going to share with you a couple of case studies, testimonials. In September of this year, my partner and I were invited to a roundtable that was being hosted in Houston with union workers to share their stories with the interim Secretary of Labor. And I've been working in this space for quite a while, and I will tell you that some of the stories I heard were absolutely heart-wrenching. There were factory workers who said, working right outside of Houston, that they were restricted from moving from their 6 feet of space over the course of 8 hours to render aid or help or do anything else. They were allowed 30 minutes for a lunch break. Other than that, if they're not in their station, then they are subject to penalties, including being fired. There were some workers who talked about they literally watched their friends pass out next to them with no one recognizing that this was heat related. These are unair conditioned, unventilated factories in the middle of summer where the temperatures easily can be 140, 150 degrees. These women talked about being fearful and crying about losing their job, knowing that their friend was compromised. The letter carriers, the U.S. postal officers who spoke, they were actually documenting on their own the heat that they were capturing in their vehicles. They had long logs to share. And remember, this is Houston heat. And what they found was that, I mean, some of them reported, they showed me the logs, they were 170 degrees within their vans where they keep the mail. And the notable thing is what they were complaining about, emphasis, is that their managers were routinely sending them texts. They could see if they were moving or not. And so all of that is part of standard for the US Post Office. They wear cameras and they wear vests. And they were saying that if they took breaks, and again, 170 degrees in the back of their van, they would literally get texts that said, you need to pick up the pace, you're not working fast enough. And bear in mind, we had a worker last summer, a US postal officer who died right outside of Baylor Hospital. The other heartbreaking story was shared by the aircraft cleaners, most of whom were women, most of whom were first generation, very few who spoke English. They used translators. Their job is once the plane taxis to the gate, they wait on the tarmac. They're required, the cleaning crew is required to wait on the tarmac. And again, it's Houston. There's no reprieve from the sun. When the plane is disembarked, they turn off the air condition. The women then enter into the plane and they have a very quick turnaround to be able to clean it. And the women talked about how wretchedly hot it was, how they passed out. If they did go to the hospital, they weren't compensated. And they also told stories of having to drink the water that was left over from passengers. What they were asking, what they've asked their employees for, is they would like to have water provided to them, and they would also have one of the carts that they could use to drive from plane to plane while they're in the sun. But again, there's no protection. So what OSHA, and this is where we're getting close to the call to action, what OSHA is required, the standard that they're required, the plan is to submit the proposal formally to Congress in early January. And that was a strategic move on OSHA's part, because we knew that if the Trump administration was successfully elected, and they are, that means it's harder for them to just immediately get rid of this heat proposal. Everyone believes that that's what's going to happen. Again, Trump's on record for saying that he's going to do, but the fact that it's now positioned to get in front of Congress by early January will apparently make it a little bit harder from a bureaucratic perspective to just eliminate it. So what OSHA is required to do with these three items, they have to, when they submit the proposal, they have to be able to address that it carries a significant risk. They have to be able to assure that their reasonably necessary, appropriate actions would in fact be successful. And then the third one is, which will probably be the one that results in its demise, is that it's technologically and economically feasible. That's where the lobbyists come in and will most likely be successful. So what OSHA would like to do to add strength to this petition that will be put in front of Congress in early January is they are submitting what's called open comments. They're required to do that. So I believe comments were opened in September. They will close officially at the end of December. This is the website that you can go log on to and share what your perspective is, what you would advocate, what line you fall on. And Alex is going to talk in a few minutes. We've got a slide that talks about some of the issues that are important when you write your testimonial. I'll let her go over those and we'll talk about Texas.
Awesome. Thanks, Rose. Okay, so for those of you who may not have submitted a public comment before, kind of the idea behind this is that every federal agency, whenever they have something that they're proposing, will typically have a period of open comments for the public to submit, and they are required to read every single public comment. So every comment will be read. Currently, as I'm looking at the page, there are 16,099 comments currently. So every single one of those will be read and noted. And so it really, like Rose was saying, adds strength to what they're proposing to do, especially kind of with this change in administration that's going to be occurring. And so in order to make effective public comments, these are some things that you need to do. This isn't necessarily petitioning or making suggestions per se. What this is really kind of bolstering the effectiveness. And so what you really want to be doing when you're making these public comments, I want to see if I can paste this image in the chat. Maybe, I don't know. I'm trying to paste an image in the chat so you can see like where you go to actually submit the comment. On the page, there's a blue box that says comment, and you'd click that. But it'll ask you to enter your comment. What is your comment about? If you have any files, you can attach those as well. Include your email address. You'll identify yourself as an individual, an organization, or anonymous. I will say if you identify yourself as an individual, your name will be listed. It is public comment, so it's public access. So your name will appear with that, but you can choose anonymous if you want. And then you'll click the I'm not a robot and submit your comment. When you're submitting your comments, you want to identify yourself. And not only is that like who you are, but also why is this something that's important to you? How does it impact you? What are your credentials? Do you have specific professional expertise in this area? Do you have personal experiences? You really want to provide your perspective, but in a way that is conducive to the process. You really want to make your opinion known, but in a way that provides relevant information, not just I agree with this and that's it. You really kind of want to be putting some more thought behind that. You really want to provide actionable suggestions. So like Rose is saying, in this case, it's pretty easy. Just I'm in favor of this bill or this proposed standard. We should pass it because of blah, 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 blah. But you really want to focus on stuff that is within the scope of the agency you're commenting. If you tell them to fire the Trump administration, that's not going to work. So like you really want to make sure that you're focused on things that's actually within the scope of the agency. You want to explain your reasoning and justify why you're taking the position or making the comment that you're positioning. And then this is kind of getting at what I was talking about earlier. You want to be thorough and precise. You want to provide your perspective, but you don't want to make it a very long rant. Like I said, all of these are required to be read by somebody. Most of the time it's either interns or just like you people who are at their desk. And if they're having to sift through a rant, it really makes it ineffective for what you're trying to do. So you really want to, like I said, provide your perspective, but you don't want to make it the super long comment that is going to make it very difficult for the person to kind of get what's relevant from it. So the link is on this slide. I also dropped the link in the chat. Rose will talk a little bit more about that, but that's essentially, and this is, you know, like she said, this is very relevant for current, but this is also something that happens with other proposed standards or agencies in the federal government as well. If you might remember from our, I forget what, Campaigns for Coasts initiative that we led a while back, we were commenting to some of the energy ocean people, the Bureau of Integrity, and I forget what the BOI. But yeah, so this is a very effective advocacy tool for anything related to the federal government. So kind of keep this in your back pocket, not just for the OSHA standard, but also for, I'm sure, the wave of proposals that will be coming starting in January. So just kind of keep that in mind. Rose, do you have anything to add? Oop.
Thanks, Alex. I said, I hope it's a tsunami of things that start pouring in January. I'll just add a couple of things to what Alex said. One is that one of the things that we found, first of all, the number of testimonials that have open comments rather that have been input is amazing. It's considered extremely high, I'm told from some of my colleagues in DC. So that's good news. And so hopefully, you know, even though it may not have an impact in the way that we want it to in terms of legislation, it's at least ringing in and it's at least being heard and it's at least moving in the right direction. I would just add one more thing. I've been asked several times, hey, can I get everybody at work to sign on? You can submit group open comments, but they're only counted as one. So it doesn't matter how many people sign it, it's only going to be counted one time. So generally we like to see individuals do that, but you don't have to be an expert in heat. You don't have to be a healthcare professional. You just have to care about, in my opinion, human rights and in this case. So yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions. I'll end with one quick update. My partner and I, we have a consulting business, Rapid Anthropology. Most of the work that we do is specific to human rights. You can go check it out, mostly heat and human rights. We know where this is going. And so what both of us have committed to is once January comes, we're going to start an initiative in Texas where we begin collecting heat worker stories. We're going to archive them. We're going to put them on the website, and we're going to keep going because we know that this is not going to go away. It's going to continue to get hot. Texas is going to continue with its minimal standards to put profits over people. If anybody's interested in volunteering and helping collect or document, please reach out to us. We're doing this work pro bono, and we're committed to doing this until House Bill 2127 is repealed and we have federal standards. So that's it. I thank you for your time. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Wonderful. I'm going to take your screen down
Okay.
so that we can see everybody. And Chip, you have a question? Yeah, you're still muted, Chip.
Sorry about that. I was just wondering, it sounded like you were anticipating, not unsurprisingly, that this may be running into some resistance, given the new administration and their perspective on deleting entire governmental agencies and the EPA administrator not wild about that agency, for example, and so on. And Alex, you referenced one ground on which it could be in trouble, but are there other grounds? I mean, do we really stand a realistic prospect of this surviving January 20th?
In my opinion, no. I think no, but I also think that resistance is key, right? And so I think it's really important. That's why I'm committed to beginning a new initiative in Texas where we can document and continue to have these voices heard. We're not going to go away. It's just going to be resistance. So yes, I think it's a given that it's not going to happen. More than likely, what I'm told from colleagues in DC is what's going to happen is it'll just stall and it can sit there for years. So that's what we anticipate happening.
I do think that it has a historical record approach. I mean, that's going to be valuable a few years down the line. And it also has a valuable modeling role to play for other states that want to, have these comments and take them into account and improve the regulation draft and implement it at the state or local levels. So,
Chip, I appreciate your optimism.
And I think something else kind of relevant to share is, and this is my own personal, having gone to a couple of public health conferences post-election results and kind of a lot of us sitting there like, what are we going to do? I think the biggest takeaway I can have or that I'm going to share is that we need to keep doing what we do, regardless of what this next administration does. I mean, we can't necessarily control them, but this is something actionable that you can take and that you can do and stand on. And this is how we build momentum. I mean, I'm going to be on record and say the Trump administration we know is one of the worst in the history of the United States, but we've had bad administrations when it comes to climate and the environment before. And I would argue that we're farther along than we've ever been because we have such a public base and a public movement going on it. So keep the momentum building if you need to take a moment to rest, but don't let that stop you from doing what you can do, is what I've taken away from talking to everybody else and what I hope everybody else here can take away, because this is a movement, not an administration issue.
Here. I agree.
And if you're interested in reading about the history of climate change politics, this is a book I'm reading right now called Glacial. Glacial.
It's blurry.
I'll share the link. But it's all about climate politics throughout the history of the United States. So I will share that link, but it's kind of a source of hope for me lately.
Good. Other questions, comments?
I have one thing to say to Alex. Alex, can you give me the name and the author in the chat or somewhere, or direct me,
Yes.
however?
Yes, the author is
I love books.
I know you love books, Jasher. Yeah, it's Chelsea Henderson. I'll drop the book in the chat.
Thank you. I can put my email just in case you've forgotten.
I would never forget your email, Joshie. I've got you. I'll send you an email too.
Thanks.
What other thoughts? What other comment? Yeah, Julie.
So with the data that you're collecting, Rose, in regards to this initiative you're launching in January, where do you see these stories and this information going to build public awareness?
So it'll be open source. I see using it as a vehicle to keep momentum going and to share these incredible stories. One of the experiences that I've had is that many people don't understand what's happening for workers, and they don't understand the nuances of how adversely they can be impacted. So I have found that in sharing the stories, that can be a way to motivate people to become active or to care about these issues. So I anticipate using them for sharing them for anyone. I see them as being archived and being used for, hopefully researchers, publications, conference presentations, and certainly to continue to bombard DC with these with workers' experiences.
You might want to consider creating a free YouTube channel. And if your subjects allow you to interview them for a 2-minute, if not, if they don't want their faces to be revealed or their names, that always adds an element of power to the interview. And so that you're actually capturing their stories in a way that Steven Spielberg captured the stories of Holocaust survivors. But, in bite-sized 2-minute or more, through with your video, with your phone, so that you could start sharing it with a wider audience.
I love that idea, but I will say, one of the challenges is these are people's lives. They've got families to support. So
Right.
it's very difficult to get them on camera. Some of the workers that I've been working with, they don't even want their name. They're anonymously submitting things. So I think that that's a great idea. And certainly that wouldn't apply to all workers, but in this space, it's been really challenging.
Yeah.
Putting food on the table, right?
Sure.
So
maybe
yeah,
maybe there's a creative way of masking their identity, which then could actually enhance the experience of listening to them. That could be something to consider.
Okay, thank you.
In fact, we have one of our members is a videographer, and I will get you her information. She may be able to assist. Jayashri, you put your hand up, and then Chip, go for it, Jayashri.
Hi, Rose, and Alex, both. I really want to thank you about this work that you're doing and the information you provided. So if I'm right, from your presentation, I gathered that you have been collecting data about the workforce that's out in the street or working outside. That is their main way of working. Is that true? But what about people whose actual job is not to work outside, but are kind of forced to work because they have a job and they don't want to lose, like stay out in the open? I'll give you my perspective. I was teacher for some time. And when I signed up as a high school science teacher, I assumed besides following all the child safety and all that rules, I'll have to teach and take care of the kids and make sure they meet the standard and all that. But after I was employed, signed all the dotted line, we were made to stand out in the heat to open the doors for the parents who would come to drop by their car so that it's efficient, us teachers. Also take the kids out to the lunchroom was very far in the extreme heat of summer, whether it was summer, and there was nothing you could do. Like, I'm older and there were many others who was like other problems. They would either faint or something would happen. And if you put in a request, could I be like exempt from this or not? They said, no, this is the rule. You have to do or resign and go. So
I think you bring up a really excellent point. And we are seeing, I have been seeing this since last 2023, when that big heat, when we started seeing the intense temperatures. One of the ways that I've seen it in Texas is heat being used to punish children. So there have been several documented cases where children were on school buses, and as a punishment for talking too loud, they would, the bus driver was raising the window, no air conditioning. It's Texas. And so the children were sick. They were exposed to extreme heat. So this was one of the reasons that I left my job in 2023. Heat has transitioned from an invisible public health crisis into a full-blown humanitarian crisis. We saw it on the border, where medics were literally told, they produced documents to withhold water from immigrants' families on the border. We see it in Texas prisons. Heat has been weaponized. Those prisons, almost 1/3 of prisons in Texas are not air conditioned. There's no ventilation. A&M's been doing studies. They can document the heat temperature at least 150 degrees. They're concrete cells. We've seen many cases where heat has weaponized and has become a political instrument. So what you're describing is what we're seeing. I think there needs to be, we have to raise our consciousness. We have to move beyond some of these stereotypes, the worldview that we have. Oh, it's always been hot. That is not the case. This is a public health crisis turned into a human rights crisis. When we have the first group, 50% of the first ones who die are those who are unhomed, right? 50%. When you add Texas prisons, when you add the corporal punishment, and even what you've described, this is a different beast. We've got weather being used to punish people and to be weaponized. So I think that that's a really excellent point that you bring up. And I anticipate that we're going to continue to see these types of issues.
thank you. I really appreciate that.
And if you, as a quick update, on my website, it's dedicated to heat and human rights, and you can see multiple cases if you're interested, as well as literature to support that.
Thank you. Chip, and then Jan.
Yes, Rose, I really wasn't just being optimistic when I said, I think I was being strategic. I think that these things go in cycles, and you have a really extraordinary overreach here that's about to happen, with withdrawal from the Paris Agreement happening again, perhaps even the UN framework for climate change itself. And so I think when I did a lot of get out the vote efforts, writing letters and calling and talking to a lot of people and some door knocking. And I spoke with hundreds of people who were just adrift in this ocean of disinformation. And I think the kind of facts that you guys have presented tonight are visceral, because, the testimonials you illustrated were heart-wrenching. And I think all of us can relate to times we've been outside and had trouble breathing, and it's just about to get a lot worse. You mentioned the 3 to 7 degrees centigrade, I believe, in Texas, right? Yeah. The global picture.
Fahrenheit.
Yeah. Oh, Fahrenheit. Okay. So that makes sense. That accords with more the global UN intergovernmental climate, panel on this, because by the end of the century, they're talking about, I think, 3.6 degrees centigrade or something like that as the likely consensus scientific estimate, between 1.7 and 3.6. And so I think if people translate that to Fahrenheit and it's explained to them and they just reflect on it, or maybe even be given, experimental, conditions where they can experience it for a very brief, safe period of time, coalitions can be developed here. And, it's amazing when you talk to all these people, it's an exponentially worse, what's the matter with Kansas problem, because they're voting against their own interest because, they think that fossil fuels and economic opportunities from that sector are going to make them all rich, drill baby drill and all that, when in fact, there's so much wrong with that factually as to where we are now, Texas being the leader in renewable energy and clean energy and all that. So if we look at where the jobs are coming from in the future and where they should coming from, we don't want this delay. And so I think there's an opportunity here, turning the challenge into an opportunity through coalitions with a lot of Latino groups, with the NAACP, with labor generally. And I guess it's probably on your strategic horizon, but it could really make a change in a state like Texas that would be, more akin to what's happening really. And that is going to be where a lot of the good work will be done over the next 4 years. It's going to be at the state and local level because it's going to be blocked at the federal level, and we won't be providing the leadership on this globally that we have been providing the last 4 years. That's just for whatever it's worth, if you wanted to respond.
I think that's helpful, and I think that is an option for trying to build momentum and support with the coalitions. So yeah, I think that we need a lot of tools in our toolbox, right?
Definitely. And just to chime in on this really quickly, and what we need help with from all of you just in general is the fact that it gets really hot in the summer. We know it's hot all around, but that summer is when the conversations start happening again about heat. But we need to keep the momentum going so that it's not just once June rolls around and suddenly we all care about heat again, and then November comes and it gets colder, like we just had a cold front come through today, and now the topic about heat has died down, but we know it's coming again. So if you can all keep the conversations going with people, with your friends, with your networks, with the coalitions that you're building, just like say, hey, it might be 70 degrees and nice today, but we know it's coming. What can we do to prepare for it? I think is also really essential.
Thank
It's something
you.
me and Rose both find very frustrating.
Yes,
Really.
yes. All right,
I
Jan,
think Jan, yeah.
yeah, we'll wrap up the Q&A section with you, Jan.
I really appreciate this information. I'll do the call to action, but if, as you say, OSHA gets abolished, I was thinking maybe the next thing is to just contact airlines individually or the school districts, anybody you see violating this common sense, humanitarian issue. Maybe we have to go around the government and just start contacting the businesses. Maybe that would be better than nothing, which, if we contact OSHA and then they go away, I don't see that it's going to come to much. So I guess we should do both. It's just my thought.
I think that's a good idea, Jan. And again, in the toolbox, there has been some movement in that area from agricultural workers in Florida, where they merged with businesses to say, hey, these farms are not taking care of their workers. We're not buying from them. So we've begun to see that movement. And I think what you're suggesting is that we extend it to other industries and businesses. And I think that's a really great point.
Yeah. And we could also always take the carrot and stick approach, meaning that find the businesses that are doing well and hold them up as exemplars in this new standard or whatever. And then the stick approach for those that maybe need to get smacked with the stick, figuratively or literally in some cases. But I feel like peer pressure among businesses can do a lot of good where maybe, like you were saying, Jan, policy and government regulation maybe won't go.
Will you keep us posted with information that we can put out in our monthly newsletter?
Absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity to do that.
Yes.
Alex and we can write like a little column every couple of months.
I think that would be terrific,
That'd be
actually.
great.
And if there's a specific business that you want to highlight or specific petitions, actions for us to take, absolutely. If we know
One
it, then yeah, then
One
people,
quick thing. Rose, can you share your contact, like your email,
Yes,
please?
I will put it in the chat box.
Chat
and
box, yeah. Thank you.
I am very
Yeah.
active with updates on my LinkedIn, which is Rose Jones. I have one for my business as well. But so if you want to, I will be posting soon. I post very often about this issue, so that's another place to check. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. I really
Thank
appreciate it.
you.
thank you,
Yeah, hold
Rose.
on, Rose. I'm gonna post your profile in the chat too.
Thank you.
Right. Thank
Rose
you.
is better at
Alex.
LinkedIn than I am.
Yeah, but I'm not so good at chat, so I appreciate it, Alex. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
and-
you.
Thank you.
Do you want to stay for a while, Jan? We're going to be wrapping up now, but we're going to do a little ceremony with water. I think you might
Oh,
appreciate
yeah.
if
Oh
you
yeah, I
if
wasn't
you-
leave. I wasn't saying goodbye. I was just like waving at Rose and everything.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right. Rose and Alex, thank you so much.
I'm gonna hang around.
Oh,
Okay.
great.
It's staggering the information that still there's something in humanity where we don't take care of each other is it's so disappointing, isn't it? But I'm glad to be with a group of people who do care and are willing to take action. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to do something very different and unusual for our wrap up today. And it is a very easy quote ceremony or ritual, depending on which of those words you like the most, that you can do that honors the earth. We have been asked, Indigenous people, Native American elders from North America and South America have put out a request that people do these simple actions. So I'm going to give you an example of one. If it feels right for you, then it's yet another tool. Even though it's not signing a petition, it is yet another tool. So this is a combination of a ceremony that I was taught from both North and South America elders, and I was given permission by a woman by the name of Sunshine Eagle, who is a Peruvian teacher. And again, not only permission to share, but encouragement. Get it out there, get it out there, get it out there. It also combines the work of Dr. Emoto. If you're familiar with his work, he was a water scientist and developed a way to photograph the crystalline structure of water. And so he would expose water to different environments and show you what that crystalline structure looked like. And he'd have a group of people standing around sending gratitude to water and be able to take a photograph of that even if it was polluted water, if people consciously sent gratitude to it, it changed the crystalline structure. His book is fascinating. Let me see, what's the name of it? It's called The Hidden Messages in Water, if you're interested. Beautiful, beautiful images. And I did a play once called The Memory of Water, which is based on a similar theme. So if you have a glass of water, use the glass of water. If you don't have a glass of water handy, you can either run and get one now, or you can use this ceremony with a glass of water when we're through. So the first thing that I'm going to do is just ask you to do a tune in and say, okay, how am I feeling? You know, we just heard some intense facts about how we care, or rather don't care, for workers. We've just had a very intense election experience. Maybe you had a good day, maybe you didn't. So just a little tune in with how am I feeling right now. And this part is from Grandma Twyla. And then she would say, okay, now I'd like you to focus on something that you're grateful for. So you can just look at your life from a different lens. Maybe somebody was kind to you today. Maybe your puppy was particularly cute. Maybe this kind of camaraderie is very meaningful to you. There's so many different things. So just focus for a moment on that thing that you are grateful for. And again, don't think the gratitude, but feel the gratitude here And now the question is, how are you feeling? Has how you're feeling changed? So for most of us, the answer is, well, you know what? It really has. I got to tell you, when I'm in one of those really down and funky moods, if I give myself 2 minutes just to come up with 3 things that I'm grateful for, it changes my dynamic. And that's what we're doing now, is looking at gratitude, believe it or not, as a force for change that we can add to the petitions that we sign and the letters that we write. And in this particular case, it's gratitude for the earth. This ceremony that was taught to me from Peru is called Pago a la Tierra. It means I pay back to the earth. I give back to her. Who feeds you every day? Where do we get our food? Yes, from factory and food workers and husbands and wives. But who feeds us every day? Where do we get that food? We get it from her. And so we take this moment to give back to her that gives to us all the time. So think of something that you're grateful for. Think of something that has sustained you recently, this year, always. And now the idea is to send that feeling, you can feel it, right? To send that gratitude into that water. And in Dr. Emoto's book, you can see the crystalline images of people who do this and what that water looks like. That's it. It is so simple. I'm grateful for my time with Climate Reality. I'm going to put that into this water. And now with this water, take a sip, nourish you, and put it in your plants if you'd like. Take it outside to your plants, or take it to any body of water that you live near, a creek, a river, the ocean. I am grateful for water. I'm grateful for the earth. I'm grateful for air. I'm grateful for the light of the sun that sparks all life on this planet. And I would like to open it up to you, please. What are you grateful for? We'll have a gratitude fest, putting all of that energy into your water. Gretchen, I saw you smile. Would you like to share? And then Chip?
Sure. As you were saying, think of something you're grateful for. I have a really nice trail behind my house. And when it was hot in the summer, I just didn't walk as much as I normally do, but I've been out there a lot more. And it's beautiful. And your background made me think of it too. It's green and it feels like tree tunnels. And there's this one particular part that I love, and you stop and you look up and the trees are enormously tall. And all I see is the sun coming through the leaves. And I will stop just for a moment and just look up at the tree canopy. And I always come back feeling much more calm and relaxed and ready to get on with whatever's next after I have that walk. So I'm always grateful for the trails that I have that I can access. And it's a lot cooler there. Speaking of heat, even when it is hot, it's a lot cooler as soon as I get into the treat area, as opposed to, the street on the way there. So I'm appreciative of the cool air too.
Thank you, Gretchen. I love that image, and it was so rich. I put it right into my water.
Mm.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to share something? Anything? All right. So that's it, folks. This is a very old, ancient ceremony. Enjoy it. And with that, I'm going to move on to announcements, and then we'll wrap up. And thank you, by the way. And how do you feel right now? Do you notice a difference? Yes, you're feeling good, Bill? Me too. Me too. And Gretchen, I just went right out with you onto those trails. Lovely. Thank you. In one of our meetings not too long ago, we had Sherry from Texas Trees Organization come and talk to us, and several of our members asked if there were going to be any tree plantings in the Oak Cliff area, and there is one coming up this Saturday. It's Friday, November 22nd at Fish Trap Lake, 2400 Toronto Street in Dallas. It's off of Singleton between Hampton and Westmoreland in West Dallas. If you are interested in participating, oh, is it really? Oh, good. Alex just posted. It's very close to the Friends at Singleton United. Awesome.
Yeah, that's where we did when Leah was still with us, we did the cleanup over there with UT Arlington. So
Oh, awesome.
It's a great place, needs a lot of help. Well, needs a lot of investment. It's an underinvested, predominantly Hispanic and Black community. So great opportunity there.
So you can go to their website at texastrees.org and get the information there about that tree planting. And the last announcement is that this is my last official act with the Climate Reality Project in Dallas-Fort Worth. This is my last official act as your education director. I will not be continuing next year. And my last official act as the working chair for the Climate Creatives. I will say that from that group, we have developed a global Climate Creatives. We've got a Facebook page. It's always going to be in the information part of our thank you, Alex, of our newsletter. And so you can always find it, and you can always, write Climate Reality and say, I'd like Beth's email address, and you are welcome to have it. I have met some really wonderful people here. And we need to know our family of like-minded people. And together, we can do what none of us individually can do. And I am very inspired by that. And I look forward to continuing with you. And I put my gratitude to you in my water.
Well, thank you, Beth. You've done so much. You put us to shame, and I hope we can follow, in your footsteps or your inspiration. Really can't tell you how much I appreciate you.
Thank you, Jan. And I'm so glad we met and we got to know each other. How fine. How lucky am I?
Echoing Jan, I know that you stepped up and did so much once I left. And so I really appreciate everything that you've done for the chapter, Beth, and everything that you do for us as people, as activists, for the environment, for the earth. Just, you're a wonderful human being and an absolute light and joy to know.
Oh, thank you, Alex. Thank you. I appreciate it. And boy, am I grateful that we know each other.
And Beth?
Our friendships and relationships will continue. Yes, Maureen, I just heard Maureen's voice.
You did. And I want to say thank you for picking up and building on the creatives group. You've done a fabulous job, and I really, really appreciate it. And I just want to wish everyone holidays where you find many small things to be thankful for.
Thank you, Maureen. Thank you. And thank you for starting our Climate Creatives group. I just stepped into your shoes, and I'm grateful. I get to put that in my water. See, this is a ceremony we can do all the time. I did a ceremony once, a similar ceremony with a native elder. I believe it was in Virginia. And we did the little ceremony, and the next day he said, "Do you feel it?" I said, "What?" He said, "Do you feel it?" I said, I'm not sure. And he said, "The energy from what we have just done is now filling this space. It's around us. It's expanding. It's lifting up. This is what we can do all the time." Well, whenever we think about it, we're busy. But next time you get a drink of water, I'll bet you might think a little differently about it, right? How easy to throw a little bit of gratitude in there. Now, we are not going to be having a meeting in December, so that everybody can enjoy the holidays and the way that you enjoy your holidays. Mike, is there anything that you want to add here?
Yes, just watch out. We'll be starting right back up in January. So third Wednesday, and yeah, be ready. We're gonna have a big. I think Jan's already working on Earth Day, so looking forward to. Wait, did I just volunteer you? No, I think you reached out.
I love
She
Earth
doesn't
Day.
know.
Of course, I'm going to do that.
Yeah, that was fun. So I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
good.
I've been juggling meetings. Most of you didn't know that. Beth did. And so I just cast my vote. So I wanted to, thank you so much, Beth. So blessed to have met you. And I know we'll be seeing you some more. I'm not sure how and where exactly, but it has been such a blessing having you, guide me personally. You're one of my mentors here. So thank you.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. Hey, I got one more thought. Not too long ago, I took a course with a woman she's an archaeologist, but her specialty is on hydration. And how she came to be an archaeologist, having a specialty, is that her archaeology was all about regions of water scarcity. And so she began to ask the question of how did the people stay hydrated? And what she suggested to us is that the best way to drink water is to drink water with some sort of plant matter in it. So a little bit of strawberry, a little bit of cucumber, or a little pinch of salt. I know it sort of sounds antithetical, but it brings the minerals in. She cautioned us, hydrating is not about drinking every glass of water you possibly can throughout the day, that in fact, that can wash out some of the minerals that are in your body. So you mineralize the water with a little bit of plant or a little bit of salt. She said you can feel it. It's got a different mouth feel. So check it out next time you're giving gratitude for your water. And Jayashri, you had something to say.
Yeah, so what I wanted to say that since we haven't been able to do any executive meeting, remember I had this problem with the Zoom payment and all that stuff. I was writing to Mike, and I'm sure, Mike, you were sick and tired of those CCs. But the reason I included every email I sent out to National was because you are one of the chair and you kept up with everything. So I wanted to specially inform you and anyone, and Beth, because you're part, and Alex, or anyone who's interested, that you will not believe it was like a legal case that I had to go through, explaining to everyone who came on board. Why did it happen? How could that be? You had the money. And so, remember how you would get. One day I was really so frustrated that I turned off everything and sat down and meditated, and then said that, well, this has to be done. So I wrote again calmly. Then at night, when I was calm, all the details again, taking screenshots on my phone of what was going on back and forth with the everything that was happening. So it took me almost 2 hours or 3 hours to finally put everything in Word and send it to the national director. who has nothing to do with finances, but because this girl left suddenly and she didn't explain to anyone, they never handed over charge. But the good news is that I finally got my money and it was not taken from the chapter. I know. I was so thankful. But I'm happy to report that that money was not taken out from the chapter funds. So chapter has the money, whatever was left, instead of that $108 taking out from me, they paid me from national. And I have got the latest total, which I wanted to report to the executive committee, but I don't know when we'll do, but I'll send you an email to all those who are on the executive board to where our finances stand and what happened with the whole process of the Zoom account. So I
Excellent.
just wanted to update you all before the year ends.
Okay, thank you. Thank
And
you,
also,
Jayshree.
and
Send that
also,
in.
one more, sorry, I'm interrupting you. Also, you know that I have told you before, I will be not keeping up with my treasurer's job. You better look for somebody, because last time, whoever it was, had asked me to continue till they find a replacement. And I will not be able to continue next year I'll be a member, I'll attend the meetings, but not as a treasurer.
Okay, so Mike, there you have it. More
Thank you.
information. Yeah.
Thank
Sorry
you,
about that.
Jayshree, and I'm so glad that was resolved. I know
I
initially I
know.
kept up, and then I honestly, with the election,
And
Good.
I wanted to inform you, that's why.
I'm
Thank
glad it was
you.
resolved. I'm sorry you had to go through that. And yes, I think Brian and I have a lot of work to do to get some leadership replaced here. Big shoes to fill from both of you. So.
All right, folks. Well, in
All right.
gratitude, we complete.
Thank you.
In gratitude, we wrap this up. In gratitude.
In gratitude.
In gratitude.
In gratitude
In
to all
gratitude.
of you.
All right.
Yeah,
Happy
grateful to all of
holidays.
you.
All right. Blessings.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.
Happy
Thank you. Same to
Thanksgiving.
you.
Happy December holidays.
Bye, guys.